some opportunities for our club. All right, we're recording now. Tonight's agenda: club announcements, the Rockler store presentation, our live demo by our very own Rick Bywater, who's going to give us some resin casting information, probably more than we'll ever use, but great information, I'm sure. We'll have an intermission because Dan and Linda Carlson has had cookies sitting around for a year and a half and they had to get rid of them. So we'll have some intermission here and then we'll go into the challenge and the show and tell. So that's kind of our agenda, getting right into it. Just wanted to say welcome back to the clubhouse. Welcome to the members who have joined via Zoom as well. I guess I just repeated myself. Requirements at the shop will align with the Woodworkers Guild in regards to mask wearing. If you're vaccinated, you're not, you don't have to wear a mask. Anybody that wants to wear a mask, feel free to wear a mask. It's a weird time, so I am totally understanding of that. I didn't want to stand up here with a mask and have and mumble through the meeting, so I apologize. Wanted to let everybody know that the open shop's available again. Has never not been available for last year here, but we do have all of our normal nights and Saturday, and now our third Sunday is included in our open shop nights. So please take advantage of that. Start getting back in the shop, even if you don't have something to turn. It's always fun to go and see whatever other people are doing. Don't forget for the mentee. We're recording again. June picnic went well. It was well attended this year. I think it was obvious that people wanted to get out a little bit. We had a great time. It was hot weather, but again, we had a nice shelter and a cool breeze coming off the lake. So it was really fun, and I appreciate everybody that helped and brought things to snack on. Kevin, as always, thank you. Kevin always gets us set up with the shelter as well as all the condiments and the meats and everything that we eat there. Again, I want to mention the Hand Turn KC site on Etsy. Ann Molina kind of coordinates that whole site, and she said that if possible, she'd like a donation of a couple of live edge bowls and pepper mill to add back to the site for some of the items that have sold. So if you want to donate to the site for the club, the sales benefit the club, please let Ann know or give her a call. The KCWT website, KCWoodturners.org, is the great place to find any information if you're wondering about events coming up, or if you're wondering about membership or members or members lists. It's all out there, including the latest updates and news. Kevin has requested, if you're a new member and you're not seeing your face when you look at the faces of our membership on the website, he'd like to get some photos of those new members. So feel free to hit Kevin up and he'll either take your photo today or send him a photo. That'd be great, but we'll get a photo associated with your name on the website. And I use that quite often when I'm going back and trying to remember what's the name. I remember the face, I don't remember the name, and I'll go back in and use that. So keep that in mind if you're one of the new members out here. Oh, this week is the 2021 AAW Virtual Symposium. So July 17th through the 18th. If you haven't already been inundated with AAW emails, check out the AAW website for more information on sign up if you're interested in that. It's hard to believe, but the Irish Fest is coming back around and is going to be here this year. So anybody that can volunteer some time to help. Sean McMahon is not here tonight, but he's always the one that coordinates that event. It's a 3-day event. It takes a lot of our members volunteering some time and helping him out. So keep that in mind. It's coming up the 4th, 5th, and 6th of Labor Day weekend of September. So it's at Crown Center. It's usually a lot of fun, but it's a lot of hours too. We did get accepted, officially accepted this year. So we are on the vendor list. And one of the nice benefits to that is if you're on the volunteer list for the Turners, they'll let you in without paying any kind of entry fee if you go in and check in at the gate and tell them you're a demonstrator or you're working the table with the club. Our October meeting, this is just down the line. Our October meeting is going to include a presentation by David Ellsworth. I think a lot of you know that name. He's been a well-known professional wood turner for many, many years. And that month, in order to give David as much time, we won't have a show and tell or a challenge. We'll just postpone it for that next meeting. So our September challenge will actually happen in November. And there is a Christmas sales event that's being planned with the Woodworkers Guild. The Woodturners are going to have a small part in that, and it's basically a workshop type, Santa's workshop type theme where kids will come through. They'll build a truck in the Woodworkers Guild, and then the last thing they'll drop by, and there will be a drilled hole in the back of the truck, and we'll turn tops in order to put in the back of the truck, and they get to walk out with a fun little gift. So keep your eyes out for that. I think more information is going to be coming on that. Sean has a handle on that one as well. I think it's actually next week. I can't remember what day the 20th is, but July 20th, our club, along with the other area club, Woodturners clubs in town, are sponsoring another live stream of a professional, Emiliano Acaval, and he is known for his traditional round bottom calabash bowls and also the process of putting in some butterfly patches into those bowls to address cracks and things. So that will have a $10 donation request on that, as we have done with the live streams. That helps us pay the professionals and keep the opportunities for the live streams available. This month we have this month's silent art auction piece is the olive pepper mill that was provided by Bill Paulo. We've got a few more days left to bid on that. That item will be available until July 16th, this Friday. And that's when bids will close on that. Our August, our August silent art auction piece is from our member, Chuck Levinson. I know I saw Chuck out there. Hi, Chuck. Chuck's donated a very pretty blue-dyed butternut crotch natural edge bowl. That's a lot. That's a mouthful right there. It's got some wonderful decorations on the bottom of the blue, as well as a beautiful feather grain kind of going through there as well. So thank you, Chuck. And bidding will start on that on Saturday, July 17th, and run through Friday, August 13th. Okay. Do we have our Rockler representative here? Okay. We'll skip the Rockler and we'll put it in between the intermission and challenge and demo if we need to, if he shows up. Okay, so actually, Effie, I had postponed your safety minute because of that presentation, but Effie will remind everybody as well as myself, think safety. First thing to think about when you're working on the lathe is think safe. If it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right, so don't try it. So that was my speed reading of all the announcements for this month. Not too many. Again, it's great to see faces out there without the square box around you and without any kind of chat button that I have to push. So welcome. I want to introduce, I don't have to introduce too many of you, but I want to introduce Rick Bywater. He's going to be doing our demonstration tonight. Rick has put together, as you can see, he's been working with resins over the last few years and has really done well with them. So without further ado, and in order to give Rick plenty of time, I'm going to turn it over to Rick. Thank you.
I think I'm on. Okay, good. Effie, we're supposed to do the Effie's safety minute. Okay, I'm going to do Effie's safety minute since I wrote it. Hi, I'm Effie. Working with epoxy or resin can be a fun and rewarding experience, but there are a few safety tips that need to be followed. Number one, always read and understand the technical literature provided when working with epoxy or resin. Number two, work in a very good ventilated area if you can. Take precautions by wearing an approved respirator. Face shield, wear appropriate gloves, clothing, and prevent it from getting on your skin. Number three, when using a pressure pot, never pressurize over the maximum rating. Never stand over the vessel while it's pressurizing. Finally, when turning epoxy resin, wear appropriate protection. Keep your lungs safe. Now, on with the show. Well, I'll tell you, I want to really thank Jack on this because having this PowerPoint, I think, is going to help keep me moving right along. I have a tendency to ramble, I think, and so and I've written lots of things down, but what I want to do is, and I don't know if first of all, thank you for being here because it's fun to see faces. I never did like the Zoom meetings, but that's me. I don't know if all of you got a chance to see my bio that I wrote, but as a continuation of that bio, I just want to talk about back in 2006 when I was in business traveling to Chicago. In November, I discovered SOFA. SOFA stands for Sculptural Objects Functional Art, and it's all 3D type of art. And when I went in there in 2006, and this is a book that I bought with all the different kinds of art that were shown, and you can look at this at break time, there was a gal demonstrating working with epoxy, and it was either 2006 or 2007, and her name was Marilyn Campbell. And it fascinated me to see what she would do with epoxy. And so then in 2008, Aramont offered a class with Marilyn Campbell. And I quickly jumped on it and signed up. And there were 6 of us that took that class. And there's a picture there that that I want to just kind of talk about. The next slide, Jack. That piece there, that piece there is pretty much her signature work. The black portion is the epoxy. And she works with West Systems, and it has fiber mixed in with the epoxy that makes it paintable and carvable and that sort of thing. So it was a thrill. I think I was the only one that actually finished that particular piece during that week. There were 3 pieces that I brought home, and the next one is just a platter. And basically, what we did is we cut and we cut it, and then we placed other pieces of wood where we cut out the piece, and that reddish color is the epoxy, the West Systems epoxy. And so in the next picture, that's what I did when I came home from Aramont. And I had to make something for my wife because she had missed me for a whole week. And she said, Aramont cost how much? Okay, here you go. Here's some nice jewelry. So anyway, those are my wife's, and I didn't really do much with the West systems. Believe it or not, I still have those and I still use those. So that is 12 years old, 12-year-old epoxy, if you can believe that. And we'll talk about that a little later because I did do a piece here recently with that epoxy. I'm not going to really talk about that tonight. I'm going to talk about urethane resin. So in 2016, Don Frank and I traveled to SWAT for the very first time. SWAT is down in Waco, Texas. And I think there's some people here in the audience that are going to go this year, if they have it. And there was a gentleman there demonstrating working with urethane resin casting burls, and his name was Alan Trout. And this is kind of what he does. So just taking a burl and turning it on the lathe and finding the right, in this case, it happened to be an A&W root beer plastic bottle. This is what you're going to end up pouring the epoxy in. And he ends up making beautiful, beautiful burl resin turnings. So coming back from that class, there were 4 things that I basically took from his class. The first thing was the pressure pot. Now, this is a pressure pot that I bought after my first one, but it's basically a 10-gallon pressure pot. It's 14 inches in diameter. It will hold 110 psi, and it's really a heavy-duty pressure pot. The next picture was my starting. Oh, I guess I better go back to the polyurethane resin. Yeah, okay. The polyurethane resin that Alan Trout used was this smooth-on resin. Now, urethane resin is different from epoxy. This particular stuff is moisture sensitive. So if you're going to use it, you're not gonna use it with any type of a wet kind of wood. It's got to be bone dry. Humidity can also affect the urethane resin. The nice thing about this is that I can pour between a 1/2 inch thick and 3 inches thick for the resin. They do make other resins as well, but this particular resin, the working time is it's 20 minutes of working time. It takes, once it's placed in the pressure pot, it cures in 16 hours minimum. And the difficulty is that I have to measure out my part A, which is 100%, and my part B, which is 90%. And so I use a digital scale for that. There's another brand out there that is also very popular and even maybe more popular, and that's called Alumalite. And since Alan Trout used this, I went and found where this could be bought. It's a dealer here in Olathe called Cast, C-A-S-T, Tech, C-E-C-H. And they're right there in Olathe, off of 135th, just east of I-35. If you go to the Smooth-On website, smooth-on.com, they have all kinds of products. I mean, if you want to make masks and foam, silicone, rubber molds, and all that kind of stuff, you can do that. I think you can do that also with Alumalite. Alumalite, I think Alumalite is cheaper. Right now, I'm having a difficult time getting this product because of a problem down in Texas. And so they're telling me that it may still take until maybe the early next year for them to be back in full swing with making the 200 series. Alumalite, I think a comparable amount might be $180. Is that right, Ed? Ed's used it. I haven't, so I can't speak for it. I did look on their website. It is a urethane resin. It's probably easier to work with because it's an equal pour, meaning I'm going to pour a part B and a part A, same amount, either by volume or weight. I like to use weight instead of volume. I've found that in using weight, a dime of resin is about a half a gram. And so I measure out lots of grams for small pours. So we'll do one here in a little bit. Coloring was probably the coolest thing in Alan Trout's demonstration. He used these two types of colors, a Jacquard Pearl X powder, which is the bigger container. The Smooth On is a liquid form. It's heavily concentrated. And when I mean heavily concentrated, not even for this pour, for just a small, decent pour, well, like for in this one here that I did, the difference is that this is going to give you a clear color. And so a toothpick drop is all you need for 100 grams. I mean, those things will last me a lifetime. Those little colors. This is using, and I'll just pass this around. This is what they can produce, is a nice clear color, if you like. And I was just an experiment there, just trying to see what how well I could get it to be clear and polished. So those are the two colors that I use, or two colorings that I use in Smooth On. Now Alumalite, similar, very similar. There's other colors out there. There's Black Diamond. I'll just let it go at that. The next slide, Jack. Okay, so now we have to mold. What are we going to pour? What are we going to make? Well, when Alan was doing burl castings, I decided, well, I'm going to do pine cones. I thought, well, and I had that largest pine cone is known as a Widowmaker, and they typically weigh between 5 and 7 pounds. I don't think I brought that one with me, but I brought a smaller one. This was probably one of the first pours that I made. When Don Frank and I came back from SWAT, I didn't really have a pressure pot set up. Don had a lot more experience than I did working with epoxy. He has a pressure pot that has a 24-inch diameter ring, and this lid on his I think it weighs 90 pounds. So it's a 24-inch in diameter. So I think we ended up splitting the cost of that, and this was probably one of the first pieces that I did. I got lucky, and so there again, pine cones were kind of where I really got started. Whether it was a white pine cone making a handle for a bottle opener, or what have you. I just kind of experimented with different things. The molds that I use are typically what you see on the screen there. They can be anything from Pepsi bottles, cottage cheese cartons, yogurt containers. That one there, you can get really creative because a pine cone, the point goes down into that funnel part. And basically what I've done is I've taken a yogurt container, cut it to reduce the diameter, and then hot glue it back together. And it's all hot glued around the rim where the two connect. And that's how I made that pour. Again, I said that smooth on the thickness that I can pour is between a 1/2 inch and 3 inches. Well, as long as that pine cone is going down through that resin, it's not 3 inches thick. They're only talking about the true thickness of just the resin. So in this particular pour right here, you know, I only have probably maybe 1.5 inches. It went all the way, but it leaked, and we'll talk about that. That's another mistake. These are some of the containers again. So what I try to do is I try to find a container that closely fits what I may want to use for my piece, because the cost is about 93 cents an ounce. These 2 gallons here ended up costing me $238. So it's like turning a good piece of wood, you know, almost an exotic kind of piece of wood. The nice thing about using it is that I have turned some pieces of wood that I wouldn't have been able to turn because they had all cracked and they just weren't turnable without the epoxy holding it all together. Here's a creative piece that I ended up molding. It turned out wonderful. There I used, it's just probably less than 1/16 of an inch plastic that you buy at Hobby Lobby. And it's bendable. So, you know, I just cut it and I used a hose clamp on top. I used the cap probably of a cottage cheese container, and I used hot glue, and that was my mold. And then I ended up pouring down from the bottom to the top with epoxy. I can't tell you how much I used. That's the biggest difficulty that I have, is judging how much epoxy should I mix for the piece. This piece right here was this bowl. Okay, so this was a beautiful, I thought it was going to be a potentially beautiful bowl, and up on top there, it is crabapple. It had so many cracks in it and voids. It had a cracked pith going right here, and there were cracks all down in through here, and so really the thought is do a total immersion pour with the bowl, and hopefully it would fill in all those cracks with the epoxy, and it did. Basically, I took a big metal container and turn that thing so it fit right down in there, and you can see after I was able to get it off. Now, one thing you have to do if you're going to use metal and you want it to come off of there, you're going to have to buy some mold release and just spray that on there. PVC pipe, you might want to spray mold release on that as well. With PVC pipe, though, what Don showed, and remember, I don't know if you remember his demonstration on epoxy 2.5 years ago. Basically, he'd take the pipe, cut it lengthwise, and then he would tape it back together. And he used this kind of tape. And the reason you use this kind of tape is because there's plastic in the middle of this tape. This actually is like a heating and duct type of tape, And so it works real well for epoxy. Now we get real creative. That is this piece right here. And it had a huge gouge going right down through there and another one on the other side. And I had a tough time trying to find a mold that encased the whole thing to where I wasn't wasting a lot of epoxy that I would have to turn away. So what I decided to do was use the tape to build a dam. And so in that upper second picture there, basically all I'm doing is cutting the tape, bending it, running it around where I want to pour, and then using like a toothpick to really marry it to the wood really tight. And that works. It really works. So you can see in the lower picture, what happened is because there's so much bark there, the bark absorbs a lot of that resin. And so I didn't get a nice smooth upper pour. So what I had to do, I ended up building a dam on top of a dam, filling this again so that all of the bark was completely had disappeared. And then once that happens, now you just put it back on the lathe and you turn away all the epoxy until you have it back to the shape that you originally wanted. And so basically I still have my foot on here because I still need to turn, and I'm going to do an epoxy lid on this, probably a spouting lid or something. So that's why I haven't quite finished this piece. There's my epoxy pine cones. The big one is the Widowmaker. I probably made another one, but anyway, those are three good pieces there. There's the inside of this one. So if you get a chance, just hold this up to the light, and that's what you see. And so when I saw that, I thought, well, shoot, maybe I need to work on doing a different look for my pours. That's where this came in. So things just you kind of weave and create. Probably I did all these this year, and one of the neat things about this is that I figured out how to chase threads with epoxy, and it works well. You just have to allow that epoxy to thoroughly dry. I said that the smooth on cures in 16 hours. It doesn't harden completely until 7 days, and so I can put it on the lathe, say in 36 hours, and turn that, but I can't chase threads in 36 hours. I've got to let it. It's kind of like concrete. Concrete gets harder and harder for, I think it takes 28 days, doesn't it, Jim, to reach full hardness? Well, epoxy 7 days. And so basically, the one on the left there, that's a pine cone. The one on the upper right there, those are hazelnuts. Those both have epoxy chase threads. And then I guess I didn't bring it, but the smaller one is pure epoxy. And that's a piece of alabaster with the epoxy rim on it. And that turned out really beautiful. That's translucent alabaster from Italy. There's a piece there that I could not have finished without pouring the epoxy because the foot was just kind of hanging on with a big, huge crack. And then that's the same type of wood, and it just has little accent pieces of epoxy resin that I like to see. There again, now this piece uses that West Systems. So going back to my time at Aramont, this and this happens to be West Systems epoxy. The upper part here, that is the smooth on, which these are basically just hazelnuts. So I've got redwood, African blackwood, hazelnut epoxy, West Systems epoxy. And then also I used a different kind of resin. This resin hardens in 2.5 minutes and is completely cured in 15 minutes, and I can put it on the lathe and turn threads. So this is a liquid plastics that I used, and it turns out wonderful. There's the this platter, and that's kind of my I think that's my show there, right, Jack? So now let's what I was able to do here before everybody came was, what I want to do is I want to do just a quick little pour, nothing fancy. Basically, all this is, I think, Jim, you gave me this piece of wood. This might be redbud. So basically, it's just a piece of little redbud here. What I've done is I've filled in the bottom part with crushed hazelnuts. And so I've weighed out my epoxy. The color, you add the color to part B. And so you always have to, when you're using your scale, part B is 90% of what part A is. And so the first important thing that you want to do is zero out your digital scale so that it shows now 0. So when I pour my epoxy or my resin in there, I'm going to get, in this case, I poured 40 grams of part B. Mixed my color in. I happen to use, in this case, I used antique bronze. Here I've got 45.5 grams of A. I always do it just a little bit more because I'm going to pour A into B. And, you know, when you're scraping the sides and everything, you might not get it quite all. So I always go just a little bit more on the A side just to leave a little bit of room. This is the white, or no, excuse me. This is going to be interference gold. And so basically what we've got there is 13.5 grams of interference gold. This is the A for that. That's 16 grams. Then I've got pearl, which is white. Pearl white. 11.5, almost 12 grams there. And 13.5 grams of the A. So now when I get that all set up, I can get this out of the way. And all I'm going to do is get ready to mix A and B. Right now it's still 20, it still gives me 20 minutes because I haven't mixed either one. It's just like 5-minute epoxy. You can do the same thing with 5-minute epoxy. Add some color to the B, mix it up to your liking. When you're ready, pour in the A. You got to move fast. Build yourself a little dam around a void that you want to have. Pour it in that little void. The only thing that you can do, though, you can't if you don't have a pressure pot, use a small little butane torch and just kind of spray lightly, or have the flame lightly kind of touch the surface there a little bit. It brings the bubbles to the surface. So you're just trying to eliminate as many bubbles as you can with 5-minute epoxy. Luckily, I have the pressure pot. So any bubbles that I may have that end up in here, I'm going to put 60 pounds of pressure in that pot. Jack and I had a conversation. I don't know if, I think what happens is the bubbles end up just shrinking down to, you can't even see them. We couldn't figure out if it was 1/60th of a bubble, but anyway, that's what we'll do is we'll mix this up. I'll pour this in here. I'm going to then put it in the pressure pot, and I'm going to fire that up, and we're ready to go with I got my air. And I'm assuming that the air jack is ready to go. I'll control it here. Okay. So what I always do is I always just kind of check. What I've done is I've leveled. I've got a big, huge block in here. But what I do is I level the block. And the reason I level it is in a garage or wherever you might be working in, the garage floor might not be level. And I want the epoxy to be level so that it doesn't I don't end up wasting a little bit that I have to turn away. So I level it, get my airline all set up, ready to go, and I'm good. So the other thing that I mentioned is because this epoxy is moisture sensitive, I'm typically not going to use wooden popsicle sticks and that type of thing. I'm using metal, and Don is the one that really clued me in on this. Use a metal stirring stick. When I talk about moisture sensitive, I want you to take a look at this. This is foam, and this is from moisture in the pine cone. That the resin in the pine cone had moisture in it, and it caused the resin to foam. See that right there? Luckily, I had very minimal foaming when I parted this piece off. There might be a little bit of foam right there, but I lucked out. See that? I guess I'm doing it this way. There we go. You got it, Effie. So anyway, this piece was right here like so. Anyway, that's what can happen with moisture sensitive urethane resin. Okay, so get set. I'm on the clock. It's just like the draft. I never know how much to really pour. It's an eyeball kind of thing. But the other important thing that I always have is I have something ready to pour the excess in. You can see that big cup full of excess. That's probably six different pours there. I can't wait to turn that. That's going to be I don't know what it'll be, but you probably want to stir this for a good minute and a half or 2 minutes or so. I guess while I'm doing that, I can just probably do this and do this and let that just kind of run in there, and I'll just keep stirring here. Yeah, I'm not used to having people watch me mix. I'm down in my basement, and that's why I use, in my basement, it's not well ventilated, so I do use the gas mask. You know, I want to save my lungs. The problem is this doesn't really give off an odor. So it sneaks up on you, and it sneaks up on you over time. It can make you, I guess, sensitive, or it's in the literature. You just have to read the literature. You can buy these colors at Hobby Lobby. You can buy them at the art stores. You know, I think these colors at the time, they were like maybe $6 a piece. At Hobby Lobby, they have smaller containers, and you might be able to get a selection of 8 or something like that. I think, Jack, isn't that right, Jack? Where you were able to get. So I've right now all I'm doing is I'm kind of mixing A back into B, and the thing you want to remember is have kind of a flat container here. I've got a squared off edge here, so I'm able to get down at the very bottom and just give it a real good mixing. The main color is going to be the antique bronze. And then I've got some gold here and some white. And, you know, you want to try and, you know, blue would have been probably very good with this piece. I mean, there's just, I guess that's where you can just pick whatever color you want to go with and see how that turns out. My main goal is to fill up to about to here, but I probably will fill because there's like a bark inclusion right there. This might end up just being a spear when it's all said and done. I ended up getting spear calipers from Sornberger during COVID, and that's how I was able to turn the sphere in that one piece over there. It's a pine cone sphere. And, you know, I'm not Anthony. Anthony does it. I mean, he's got a good eye on making spears. I got to have a certain technique, I guess, because I don't do it all the time. We're doing pretty good, Jack. Okay, so I guess we're ready to go. So now what I've done here is, let me just, hopefully you can see all this. Got a good shot of it, Effie? Okay, so basically all this is a stand. And that's stand, everything's gonna go into the pressure pot. You know, you got to get creative on how you can support it well enough. So I normally should wear nitro gloves. Okay, now we'll just kind of stop there and we'll just continue a pour. This is where it just, you know, there's no formula. It gets messy, so I put this paper down. It's just throw away kind of a thick paper that. Okay, so you can kind of see it filling in there. It's not completely full. And because there's so many different air cavities in there and everything, that's where the pressure pot really comes in handy. You do overfill it. Overfill on a pine cone. Overfill if there's lots of bark, because what happens is that bark is like a sponge. It's just going to absorb that resin into it, and so that's why it's better to overfill. I'm going to overfill. I may fill it right up to my the top right here. I ended up leaving my point here so that I can remount it on the lathe and turn my jaw. Typically, a lot of times when I'm doing a big pour like this one, I can't see what I'm doing. I have no idea. You put it in the pressure pot. It's almost like a Christmas present. You have no idea what to expect. I cut these up, peel it down, and voila. Now, if it does drop down, Mike, Re-pour, just re-pour. The next day, just keep going. It really doesn't show a line because, I mean, well, it does show a line. You can take a look at this one and you'll see the color variance and everything. I think that's going to add to it. I'm not that critical about having a distinct line. What's going to end up happening is I'm going to end up turning all the epoxy away on this side anyway, except for this one little spot right here that fills in. And then what happens, what if I make a spear, that's all going to be gone anyway. Doesn't matter. Until I decide what I'm going to do, though, I'm going to just fill it up and I like a dominant color. My dominant color is obviously the antique bronze, and then the gold and the white are just kind of a little bit of an accent that's why I didn't make as much. If you need to do real controlled small pours, this works well. That's how I was able to do the hazelnuts over there, the white and the black. It allows you to really pinpoint a specific area. How are we doing here? Well, it looks pretty cool. I got this big void right there that I still need to work at. You can, looking down at it, it looks really cool because there's just a kind of a mixture of golds and whites and browns. Okay, so I think I'm about where I need to be. I just kind of squeeze it like this. I'm trying to squeeze the air out of it a little bit. I got this here, so. Okay, so yeah, I think that's probably good. So basically what I'm going to do is I don't want to waste my my epoxy. So what this could be is this could actually be a turned vessel lid. You know, you go through the opening in the middle and okay. It doesn't move on me. I think it, and also it looks centered. Okay. 8 or 8.5, smaller things, that's fine. But what it didn't do is that after I get 60 pounds in here, I can unhook my hose and it'll hold the pressure forever. Whereas in the Harbor Freight one, you got to have your airline hooked all the time, going on at night. You're trying to sleep, the thing's going off, your wife's yelling at you. She yells at me because I leave it on accidentally too. But anyway, so what I do is where's my, there it is. Okay, so I kind of tighten these just a little bit better, just because. The other thing that I like to do is I like to pour and get the pour done by noon. If I get the pour done by noon, then as soon as I wake up and have a cup of coffee, I can open this thing up and see how it turned out. And it's like Christmas every time I do this when I open it up, because I never know how it's going to turn out. I've been disappointed, Mike, when it spilled. I don't know if you looked in here, but there was one where, well, that one there leaked. We didn't really get into that, but I made a homemade, let me get the air in this and then we'll talk about that. We're close to 15 minutes, you think? Something like that? Okay, I think we're good. No air. £60, and this will hold 110. So I mean, I'm not even really pushing the limit. Plus, these are big, heavy duty. Yeah, they just recommend in their literature that you put 60 pounds of pressure on. The other thing that I wanted to mention while we're waiting here, mine is for a 1/2 inch to 3 inches. If you want, you can get a 204, and that the 204, you can do a maximum thickness up to 6 inches. And then a 206, you can do greater than 6 inches. Now, I don't know. Okay, so their deep pour is the same as the 200 then. Well, basically anything that I mean, if you spilled, you got some on the scale. These I just throw away. Paper I just throw away. Here's an epoxy light bulb, pine cone light bulb. That's kind of a neat Christmas ornament there. Yeah, I will. I'm hoping. Sure exactly which was going to be the bottom of the platter, which was going to be the top. I left my faceplate on because I had to have a way of just lowering it down in there. I couldn't even get my fingers on the side. So basically, yeah, this one is the smooth on coloring. I probably got it a little dark, but it's see-throughable. And I'm gonna pour it up to here. I'm gonna do another pour on that one. Again, this particular piece is Japanese cherry, ornamental Japanese cherry burl. And the bark was going all the way around, and it was barely hanging on. And as I was cleaning the bark out, the piece broke in half, or not in half, a third to a 2/3. So basically, just by making a mold, holding it together, making the pour, put it back together again. It was like Humpty Dumpty. Nope, did it all in one pour. This particular piece, this has 5 pours. This is where I was experimenting with the hazelnuts. So the first thing I had to do is I had a plastic thing going up, so it was able to hold it in place. And I glued down these hazelnuts upside down with just a little pour, just so that they were totally encapsulated in the epoxy. And they were a half a shell. After that, I was able to just go to the disc sander and sand off the shell so that it exposed the opening. Then that's where I did a real specific pour of picking black and white. I just wanted to try something different. And then this is a pour of rustic red, and I think some gold, maybe a little white, and I got that done. After that was done, I then went and did a full pour using something like this because it was infested with termites. So did a full pour and got that all done. Turned that on the lathe. Then once that was done, I decided to try and do epoxy or resin threads. And so in doing that, this is how it's done. Basically, it's a solid pour for your male, and then you're going to turn all this away and leave the part for the male thread. And then the female thread, basically you just cut a groove in the wood, however thick you want the thread to be, and make that pour. So you're going to make these 2 pours at the same time, so they're the same colors. This happens to be 4 colors. I love these colors: 2 blues, a black, and a white. This, by the way, is going to be a sphere that fits inside the other sphere. This is just Vanderwolf pine. You have to be careful with the woods. I tried river birch. I think you might have given me some river birch, Rich, a long time ago. And it's so soft that it absorbs the resin right into the wood and makes it dark. And so I don't like that. So you have to be kind of aware of, I think it's got to be a harder wood. Otherwise it ends up absorbing down into the wood, and it just doesn't look as good. So with that, any other questions? Yes, Stuart. I do not. I made these specialized turning tools out of they're shear scrapes. It's a shear cut, shear scrape. I made them out of jointer blades. I don't turn fast, and when it's held at an angle, it just comes right off. If you turn too fast and it's not a smooth type of cut, it'll take it off in chunks. And you might then end up taking a chunk off further in close to the wood that you didn't want. So that's why I turn it real slow. I think I brought a piece. Yeah, this one, it doesn't really show it. Anyway, yeah, that's what I do. I will use a bowl gouge, do a shear cut on a bowl gouge, turn slow, 3/8 inch bowl gouge, and do the same thing. Yes. Negative rakes work. I don't know about the carbide tips, but negative rake, okay. Yes. I don't know about that. You know, I don't know if sand. I don't know if sand would work. I think sand though would be a better compact thing to use from a volume standpoint. So then you know how much to mix. I just always have, if I have, I'd rather have a little bit too much than not enough. You know, this ended up being 6 or 7 pours, but it's going to be it's just full of hazelnuts. And so I think it's going to be really cool once I decide to turn it. The cup actually ends up with a dovetail. So it's got a natural dovetail on it. And so we'll just see what happens. But yeah, I don't know how much this weighs, but at 93 cents an ounce, it adds up. But I would recommend Alumalite if you wanted to try that. Ed seems to say it's a lot easier to use, and because it's equal parts, A and B, coloring's the same. Still got to use a pressure pot. Still moisture sensitive, but it's not a dealer network. You can just go right on alumalite.com and order it. Do they charge a shipping charge? Yep. Okay. All right. Hey, I've taken enough time, I think. Okay. Yes. 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 No. I have never had a problem. And there again, if I really want to get a certain kind of color in an area, using this holds 5 millimeters and it just sucks it right up, and you can just get it right in a specific area. It works. So, and maybe Alan Trout had tried it, and that's why he was really recommending Smooth On. He recommended it, and I went with it. And so I know Don Frank has used and uses Smooth On as well. He's not here tonight. Otherwise, I would have really wanted him to add whatever he wanted to add. Yes. I have not. Now, the guys here, what is that? KC Wood, that do the pours, deep pours with river tables, that type of thing. That would really be cool to do. I would love to try that. I don't know if I'll ever get around to it, but I would love to try it. There's so much to do out there, But anyway, okay, so the challenge is going to be turn something with epoxy. Whether it's 5-minute epoxy and you're just filling a little void, if you want to try it, it comes in smaller containers. The Alumalite, I'm sure, is, Ed, do you know roughly how much is Alumalite for something like this? Any idea? $30 to $40. There you go. You're not going to break the bank. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. I didn't really talk about this that much. You add this wood fibrous material. So you're doing the A and the B with West Systems, and you add this wood fiber, and you get the mixture to be like almost like a brownie mixture. Okay. And then you're going to pour it over whatever you're going to end up wanting to do. So in this case, what I did was I had a real tight fit with a PVC pipe, okay? And that gave me about 1/8 of an inch all the way around. And that's how I was able to do these as well. But the other thing that I didn't mention is you have to then cover the wood with like a shrink wrap. And then that way you're able to then, I was able to pull this piece right off. This piece right off of my wood. And then I did all the piercing off the wood, painted it off the wood, put it back on, and then sprayed it with a matte finish. And I can't get it off now. The matte finish just kind of stuck it on there. So anyway, they're work with. So I hope you give it a shot, and thank you very much.
Rick, thank you. Thank you. It's a great presentation, a lot of new information to all of us, I'm sure. I'm sure we can learn from that. Challenge.
Just as long as there's some epoxy in your work, you know.
Other
I
than
don't.
glue.
Yeah.
I epoxy a lot of things.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't want to make it real difficult. So anyway, yep,
Yeah.
it's open
Use your
to
imagination.
interpretation.
That's right. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time.